Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I am joined by Rachel.
Hello, everyone.
And Mackenzie.
Hello.
And Alex.
Hey!
The gang is back together. It's, we've kind of been different forms of us over the past few weeks. Now it's the original band. We're all here. How's everyone doing? It feels good to be back in the seats with everyone, the original cast here. Got rid of all our guests.
We're back.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask Mackenzie, how's it feel to wear the headset that Mark Ashton wore?
Wow, I feel so honored.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Is that what I was supposed to say?
Yeah. Yep. That's
2 points.
So what's up? Where's life been taking everyone? It's been a little while since we've all been here, so maybe we can catch up on everyone's personal current events. Anyone who wants to volunteer? It's show and tell. I started to say share and tell. I guess it is more share and tell because you can't show things on an audio podcast.
I can start.
There's video too.
Thank you, Rachel.
I'll go.
Okay. I'm glad I don't have to ramble anymore.
I feel like that was just like, I just forgot the name of the movie where she puts her 3 fingers up and it's like.
Hunger Games?
Yeah, Hunger Games. I don't know. I forgot.
Your tribute.
I feel like I just,
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I volunteer.
Yeah. So anyways, so I just started a new job, which is kind of unexpected and crazy.
Cue the applause. Yay.
Yay.
Congrats.
You guys sounded really not excited.
Yeah.
I'm
more excited.
Personally excited, but not excited, to be honest. Because we get to work together way less. Like I saw you like every day, I feel like, and now I don't ever see you.
I'm in the corner of the other side of the church. So
what are you doing?
So I am on the kids ministry team here now at the church, and so I am the kids discipleship coordinator. So I'm really excited, and
so cool.
It's gonna be a new thing for me, but I definitely felt like God was leading me in that direction, and just all the things that he did to work that out were awesome, and got to step into that. So now I'm 3 weeks in, so it's all new, and we had our first kickoff last Wednesday, and it was crazy, and ministry is fun and hard, and I went home and cried, and that's okay.
Wow.
That was really authentic.
Yeah, thank you for being vulnerable.
I'm just being real. So just learning everything, and it's so cool to be able to like lean into God in all those times that you're just kind of learning and figuring out what it's going to look like. So that's my update.
I can relate to that. Like, I know when I started here, the first 6 months was just a lot of like, as I would post things to social media, just constantly second guessing everything I did and just beat myself up over it for a long time. But now I'm just like, well, let's just hope this works.
Yeah.
It's fine. I feel less pressure.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to share what they've been up to?
Well, I'm still a resident, so there's that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's nothing new.
That means you haven't been like kicked out or done anything horrible.
They haven't fired me from the program yet.
Yeah.
I don't know that can happen.
Is that the term that you would use if you were
fired?
you get fired.
There has not been anyone that has been fired, but there are people
terminated.
Let go.
Disqualified.
A nice word. But I would say I'm teaching a Bible study at the church, which is really cool, and that's why I'm talking about it, is because we are mapping on actual maps the book of Genesis. And if you are a geography nerd, it is so exciting. So
it's like,
and this is not sarcastic.
This is where Adam named the giraffe.
Well, it's actually more like Genesis 12, so the patriarchs.
Okay. Oh,
so
never mind. Not as
it's like they were promised land, and do we really know what that means? Like, where was the land?
Yeah,
it's important. So
it's awesome.
And you have a new supervisor. Your old supervisor left and went to California.
Yeah, that's true. That happened.
Did he go start a cult?
Yeah.
No. Just kidding. Sorry,
we miss
Dave.
him. We miss Dave.
I love Dave.
Dave, if you're listening, we miss you.
Which, if you didn't listen to the podcast about cults, that was a while ago. You could go check that out.
Yes. So now, Alex is my supervisor. So that's pretty cool, I guess.
Over there.
He's pretty excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. You guys all didn't get to see her roll her eyes about that, but that's fun because Mackenzie and our band started back in middle school days, when she
we go way back.
a
like
middle
a
school
reunion.
volunteer. So it is. And I think really exciting things you get to work on that you're passionate about. And you're probably one of the best people on our staff. as a whole about reaching people in third spaces.
I thought he was about to put a period there.
Yeah, me too.
You're
I
like
was
one of the
wow,
best people on our
thank you.
staff,
I was like,
period.
you know, you're right, Alex.
Yes.
No, but no, that eye roll was not an eye roll.
Oh, okay.
If I did it, I'm sorry, it wasn't intentional.
She said something, all right.
Confession.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cool.
I'm just tired. That's what I always say.
Sweet. Yeah, for me, it's been, obviously, my voice has been around the podcast and things like that, but my wife and I have been navigating just some medical stuff with our daughter. So we've got a 7-month-old, and so she's got just had a progression of hearing issues, and we found out that she's deaf, and but that wasn't original. So now we've got like an MRI next week and a lot of scary things. Like, it's just kind of scary as a parent to put your kid in anesthesia for like the second time in her life next week to find out what's going on in her body. She's, I mean, so cute. Like, she's got little hearing aids that she's wearing right now, even though literally they're not doing anything. But it's kind of a loophole we have to jump through for insurance for the next things. And then she's got little glasses because she's got some sight problems. And so, I mean, she's like the cutest little girl in the world with all that kind of stuff on. But as a parent, like, we're just navigating it, but also seeing God's goodness, like, in the middle of all of those things. And so that's kind of what's happened. I'm sure there'll be more to come in coming weeks and months, but just invite you guys to pray if you're listening. If you're into prayer, invite you to pray for that kind of stuff, and just let you guys know that's going on in my life. So who knows? Maybe I miss a podcast here or there for a doctor's appointment or those kind of things. But that's what's happening. But man, God has been so good and so faithful in the middle of all of this kind of stuff, and so that's been also fun. So there's where we're at. It's like this not exciting stuff, but also like exciting because it helps you lean into God and lean into all that even more. And at work, like we said, Mackenzie's former supervisor is gone, and so we've just got stuff going on that adult discipleship team, and in the middle of hiring new people, hopefully, and just kind of building hopefully a new fun culture around our discipleship team. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunities that are in that. And so that's my quick life update.
Good deal.
Thank you.
I suppose, is this my turn now? Do I get a
Your
share?
turn.
We all
Tell us
shared
where you went.
I did go on vacation. I went and hung out with Dorian, and he didn't show up, so that was good.
I did not get that joke.
I'm
just
so
now.
confused.
Anyways, there was this big giant hurricane that was going to hit Florida.
Yes. My
Oh, it
wife
was
went there
called
too.
Dorian.
Hurricane Dorian. Yeah.
I thought you meant to say Dory, and I was like, Dory. It's Dory.
No, Dory.
Like the explorer, right?
No, my family and I, we went to Florida and did the whole Disney World thing. It was really exciting and fun. We walked a lot. My feet are still healing.
I bet.
But we were like kind of freaking out though, because at least the media was making. I mean, obviously, I don't want to downplay the hurricane because the Bahamas were just gravely affected by it.
Yeah.
And it's very tragic. But just kind of the way the media portrays this stuff and the way they just start to like put fear in everyone's hearts about these things. And so we decided to go anyways. We were like, it was right as we were just a few days before it was supposed to make landfall. But, you kind of just make a decision and you do it. And it worked out for us because like people had canceled their vacations. And so we had like the park, it felt like for Disney, at least it felt like it was to ourselves for like quite a few days before people started showing up again. It was a really good time, but I'm not as pale as I was probably the last time people seen me. So that'll last for a few more weeks.
Had your kids been before?
No, my wife and I went 10 years ago before we had kids, and then this is the first time, so they got to experience all of the magic and the whimsy, and also like, oh wow, this is really big, and this is the most walking I've ever done in my young life. So no, it's one of those things where you realize quick, like, okay, you're gonna wait in line for like 30 minutes for this 2-minute experience, and you kind of gotta balance that out and go, is that worth it for me? And some people it's like hard pass, like no, it's not worth it. For me it was like a mix. Like some of the rides were just so fun that you're like, okay, this is totally worth it, I'll do it again. But my wife is a big Disney World nerd. She listens to podcasts, is on the forums. She knows all the loopholes and
Wow.
all the like everything about it. So if you're ever going, she'd probably.
Oh,
I didn't
that's
know that
awesome.
was a thing.
Yeah.
Podcast? They have a podcast?
There's podcasts there's multiple podcasts for Disney World specifically. Like
If we have a podcast,
Yeah,
Disney
it's
definitely
just
has
say,
a
yeah.
podcast.
All right, I'm going to look that
So
up.
check that out. I don't know any of the names. I'm sorry, can't plug them here. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. So
Love it.
yeah,
Love it. Love it. And I got a new pack of Oreos too. That's also what I'm
you're a
up to.
big Oreo fan.
I'm
have
a big
noticed
Oreo
that.
person. So if you follow me on social media, you'll find me post like anytime there's new Oreos. And Oreo probably over the last 5 years has put out random flavors from fruit punch to, key lime pie, some really good ones, some bad ones.
pumpkin spice.
And so someone came up to me in church a few weeks ago to speak my love language of Oreo and brought me these mystery Oreos. And I thought, since our church is talking about being contributors and not consumers, that I would contribute
Wow.
this to our podcast and open it fresh for all of us, because we could win ourselves 50 grand. Okay. If we
Wow.
can guess the flavor of Oreo cream, we have a chance to win $50,000.
Okay, so
Imagine the things we could do with our podcast.
it looks like it's a chocolate wafer still.
Chocolate
So
wafer.
the cream is what we're guessing.
So we're guessing the cream. So I'm going to open these fresh.
All right.
So
yeah.
any of our listeners could go online and
Yeah,
say
we
what the
can't
flavor
share
is
what we
to-
think.
Yeah, what if
They're gonna
they-
steal
win
our
the money?
answers.
Yeah,
All right, if you win this prize,
I'm opening them now.
you have to give us money.
at least tithe on your earnings?
There you
We'll
go.
pass these, pass them
you.
around, pass
Okay,
them
these
around.
Are these double stuff?
I
I
think
don't-
they're single stuff.
Okay. This is
they look double.
this.
I'm scared.
Not Megan though.
I'm so scared.
Oh, I can already smell like cinnamon or something.
I'm going with the.
Oh.
I'm
Okay,
going with the.
Are we all gonna eat it at once?
Yeah, I'll eat it at once.
Are we
and
supposed
we'll-
to just
we'll
why
describe?
You took yours apart
I
already?
did.
That's what I'm doing,
because
'cause
you got to taste the cream. Okay.
So we're just tasting the cream.
Yep. So
Okay.
those aren't watching this.
just
Sorry.
This is really
Licking
this
it?
is a really good ASMR episode here.
Dead space while we chew.
That is like cinnamony. That like reminds me of
I got it.
like graham crackers.
Oh,
I'm going with my
wow.
guess.
Okay.
My guess is horchata. Like the.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's kind of like a
Horchata-
cinnamon
That
kind
is
of milk.
cinnamon. Yeah.
The best way to describe horchata is like if you've ever drank the milk after eating cinnamon toast
Yeah,
crunch.
perfect. That is.
That's what this tastes like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could.
I would agree with that.
I'm going horchata. It could be cinnamon toast crunch milk. Is that your guess?
yeah.
Is that official?
That's my guess. Cinnamon toast crunch milk.
Okay. Okay.
I have no idea, but I did not like it.
or like
I
Teddy
did not
Grahams.
like it.
It
I
does
put it
taste
in the
like I was
middle.
thinking about
Do you have an official guess?
cinnamon.
50 grand on the line here.
Okay.
Yeah, like
I'm gonna let everyone in on
old cinnamon that's expired. I
Oh,
don't know if
expired
cinnamon's
cinnamon.
I
There
don't
you
know.
go.
Does it expire?
Sad Christmas. That's the flavor that you're going
Thank you.
Sad Christmas.
I would say more like sad Black Friday.
Oh, okay.
Sad Black Friday.
Day
Okay.
after
It's
Thanksgiving.
like Thanksgiving.
I'm finishing
but
this. It's really
old.
good.
You have an official vote?
You want mine? I licked the inside of it.
I feel like I have
There's
to.
more. There's plenty more that she doesn't have to take yours. We have a whole pack.
Real quick, I just wanted to let everyone behind the scenes a little bit. There's this very kind gentleman here named Austin who like produces the show and everything. And
We'll throw him an Oreo.
so I'm going to throw him an Oreo, so people aren't wondering why I'm throwing Oreos. Here, Austin, catch.
there you go.
And then we'll get his take
He
on
caught
it too.
it.
He can yell it over here.
I want to go with like Teddy Graham.
oh yes, actually, yes.
That was actually my first. Like I thought of
what I thought of.
They have these cinnamon goldfish crackers, and it kind of reminded me of that
Okay.
too. So Teddy Graham.
That does not sound
I
right.
feel like it's definitely cinnamon, but
So buy a pack of Oreos or come visit us at the church. I'll put these in my office and you can try it. And I'd like to see what you guys' guesses are. That's random, a random
Okay.
culture thing. Hopefully we win the $50,000
Yes.
and we can buy some uniform outfits.
maybe they can sponsor us.
Oh,
or that we can buy some uniform outfits for our podcast and change them up every week, kind of like they do on Sunday service with Kanye West.
oh.
I was wondering where you're going.
You just transitioned.
I
there.
just transitioned us.
You didn't even care. Austin, yell at me what flavor it is real quick. We need an update.
Gotta be cinnamon something.
Cinnamon something. There you
Yeah.
go.
Thank you, Austin.
something.
There it is. Cinnamon something. All right. I really prefer Sad Christmas. So anyways, we're talking about, this whole phenomenon. It's not really a phenomenon. It's been around for a long time. But like kind of not celebrity pastors, but like A-list celebrities who are Christians. How do we respond to that? Like, what do we think of that? Like, do we buy it? Do we believe it? Is
Yeah.
it a good? Is the publicity good for the church? Is it bad for the church? Like all this stuff. We're just going to kind of pull it apart a little bit. But yeah, you mentioned Sunday service, and that's true. They all wear the same outfits.
Yeah.
That's weird.
They design them every other week. And so for those who don't know what Sunday service is, Kanye West, Kanye, Ye, whatever you want to call him, Yeezy, lots of different names.
Another name that
He has been holding a service, or was holding a service at his house. It began there, a church service, which has had different rules and it's morphed over time. But really, he's taken the show on the road over the last few weeks, which is kind of what's perked a lot of people's interest. Eric and I were in the ATL in Hotlanta a few weeks ago, and he stopped there. We were not with Kanye at that. But
We just missed him.
yeah, we just missed him.
I was disappointed.
But he had this incredible church service, I guess, and we kind of watched a lot of things he was saying, and I think both of us were kind of intrigued by the things that he was saying weren't like totally wild and off the wall like I expected.
Yeah, I think for what people have come to expect from Kanye West, it's just he's rambly and he's very self-promoting and very much about himself.
Yeah.
I mean, coming from the man who took on the nickname Yeezus,
Yeah.
you would think if he's actually talking about Jesus, like what happened, like something changed in the way that he's talking about him. And so I think we watched some, I think it was on Instagram, some video that was taken at this I can't remember the name of the church, but it was a big church in Atlanta, and they bring in a bunch of people. He has a choir director that he brings, and they ask for volunteers to come and to the rehearsals, and they just do this huge concert. But the music is very like gospel orientated. And then I think what struck us, what you're talking about, is just he started talking, almost preaching, maybe like as close as it could have got. And the things he was saying it's like, okay, well, I can't disagree with anything you're saying right now. So that's one thing. But the way it just felt like it was actually coming from an educated standpoint, if that makes sense. It didn't feel like someone who was just repeating churchy things they'd heard.
Yeah.
Like it felt like it was coming from a more honest place than I would have assumed.
Yeah. I think the thing that struck out to me was one statement was like, I was chasing money, like obvious things that everyone knows about him, culture, money, cars, all of those things. And then when I met Jesus, my life, like I've gotten better relationships with my kids and with my wife and all that kind of stuff, which kind of made my ears perk up. Like, okay, he acknowledged what we all know him for, which we would say is a sinful lifestyle, not to have money or things, but to chase those things, after those things, to find your...
The one quote here I've got, it says, "The power of God can't be calculated by a number, by a first week sale, by a bank account, by how many cars you drive, by how big your house is, and how many acres you got."
Yep.
So it's just one of those things where, yeah, like you said,
that's true.
It's true. Yeah. So that's maybe why it caught us off guard a little bit, because it wasn't as self-promoting as he typically would have been.
And this last Sunday he was in Wyoming, and then we came back on Monday, and we were like, hey, Rachel, Mackenzie, we want to kind of talk about this week, because this is a podcast that's about culture and Christianity and where all that fits. And we've dove into some pretty deep topics. I mean, race and grief over the last few weeks, over the last month, really. And Pastor Mark was in there just talking about that. And so we thought we'd go after something that's really a little bit more in culture, because we haven't done that fully in a while. So here we are.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder why I'm on this podcast, because you guys are like, let's talk about Kanye and what he did, and I'm like, what's he doing? I didn't even know this was a thing, because I do not keep up with that kind of stuff very often.
You're not keeping up with the Kardashians, huh?
No, I'm not. But I think kind of what you guys were talking about him and what he's saying is true. And I think maybe that's not necessarily what's in question, or maybe what's concerning people is like whether he's converted to be a Christian or not, or whether he's actually following Jesus or not. But maybe what he's doing with it, I think that's more what people are going to be questioning, of like, yeah, okay, so maybe he is a Christian now, but why is he doing all these concerts, or why is he doing all these Sunday service things? What is the purpose of this, or what's the heart behind this, or, is this good? Is this bad? What do we, think of that? And I think that's maybe more of the question, because obviously we can't say whether or not he is saved. That's not for us to say, but I think what he's doing does need to have some accountability. If it is, within the Christian faith, there is accountability that comes with that. And so kind of how do we go about that and what we think? And so,
which was one of his points actually in that one, is that we need to keep each other accountable, which I also thought was wild, that this guy was asking for accountability. But yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying.
I think it's interesting when you look at somebody like Justin Bieber, Justin Bieber had, at his church, he doesn't lead the worship, but he had the opportunity to do it and said something along the lines of, I didn't want to do this at first because I didn't want people to think it was about a show. Where the opposite, you have Kanye, who's kind of traveling around and doing these attractional things. And from what I read, a lot of them were invite only. A few of them were open to the public, but I don't know. It does seem kind of weird. And maybe you can tell us more about this, Eric, but he has an album coming out.
Right. His album comes out today. So like if you're listening to this on Friday, it's out now, supposedly. I think his wife tweeted something out. And I mean, just to give people kind of an idea, I mean, the title of the album is called Jesus is King. And I don't have the track list here, but the tracks all are named pretty much like a gospel album, like what you'd expect from that. I think people rightfully so, kind of call some of this into question, because I think the Sunday service thing has morphed a lot. Like, it started out being kind of a very exclusive, like, LA thing where they'd go out into like some park or wooded area and do these big events, and a lot of like his celebrity friends or celebrity pastors or athletes or whatever would be invited to this thing. And then it started to broaden more. And I think one of the telltale signs of it broadening was there was he was at Coachella and he did Sunday service there, and they were selling merch there. And like, it was like a sweatshirt that said Sunday service on it, and they'd sell it for like $200 or something crazy. It was really expensive. And so you could definitely see the money side of it there. But yeah, but now it's kind of morphed into this thing where he's just showing up at different locations across the country, and having these services, and those are open to the public. Now, is it just a brilliant marketing plan, like to promote this album coming out? Maybe. I don't know.
I'd say, well, I don't want to take a hard stance, but
probably, right? Like,
probably.
You're going to say probably. But I think really what we're kind of, maybe more just curious about is this is he just using Christianity as a stepping stone to promote his career, or did he actually experience life change? And I think before we can get into that much further, we kind of have to look at Christianity in a broad sense, and our fascination as Christians with celebrities that convert. And like, I think that sometimes it's unhealthy. Like, sometimes it's very much like, I think it becomes a point of validation for Christians. Yeah. Like, if like, oh, this celebrity's a Christian, so now it's okay for me to be outspoken about my faith because I don't have to be scared of it because, Kanye or Justin Bieber,
they think
whoever,
Jesus on the award show.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Tim Tebow's a Christian, so now it's okay for me to be outspoken too. And, I think that's kind of the gross side of it sometimes, is that we feel like we need that validation. But yeah, I don't know.
I think also with that comes a sense of like, these people are already leaders within our culture. Yeah. And so
they're trendsetters. They're making the culture, right?
So when they do make a statement of faith that they are Christians, they automatically become Christian leaders. Like, whether they think it or not, like, you are in front of people, you're leading people, you're guiding people, and you're a Christian now. So you're leading people in their faith. So I think with that also comes a lot of responsibility. We see it in the Bible. There is responsibility. There is extra pressure and things that have to come with being a Christian leader. And I don't think that necessarily these people who are becoming Christians that are celebrities are even like aware of that maybe sometimes. And so, or I don't know, it's just easy to be like, oh, they're Christian, so we can follow and do whatever they're doing. And that's going to be like our faith and Christianity. And I think sometimes it can lead to some bad just examples of what a Christian should be, maybe sometimes. So it's just a hard thing to figure out.
And I don't think, like, if this is an honest trajectory for him, like, it's not that radical from other artists, like in the past. Like, I mean, if anybody who's older that's listening and recognizes these names, you'll understand what I mean. But like, I know country artists have always kind of had this trajectory, like Conway Twitty, Johnny Cash, Randy Travis. I think these guys who like had these catalogs of songs about whatever you want to talk, whatever, like stereotypical country songs, and then later in their life, they find Jesus or whatever changes, and they start putting out gospel albums. And I think a lot of the Christian community supported that. And, and maybe that feels like a safer transition, because I mean, I will say I've noticed a lot of people in the Christian community who are okay with listening to 2 radio stations, and that's the Christian radio station and the country station. Yeah. So maybe that's just the safe bet there, and jumping from Kanye West's older albums to this new potentially gospel album is a bit of a stretch for some.
Jesus walks with him. Okay, that was his first album, and so, but yeah, I think that's the catch-22 that's in all of it, is they are culture shapers. And so like a huge part of me is like seriously hopeful, like, man, I hope the gospel has grasped their heart, because if it has, imagine the life change and transformation that they can have in culture as part of that. But then part of me is skeptical, and I think should be skeptical, because we're also supposed to know people by their fruit, and it's going to take some time. If they've done a lot of damage or poor things in culture, almost blasphemous things, like if someone's literally done an interview where they have like said, if the New Testament was written today, I would be in it, which Kanye has said.
He was on the cover of Rolling Stone dressed as Jesus.
So that type of person, like, it makes me wonder, like, I would root for a Saul to Paul type of conversion. I don't know that he's persecuted Christians, like, obviously the same way that Saul
depends
did.
On who you talk to.
Yeah, but at least in culture, he probably has, probably not like taken off their heads and that kind of stuff. And so part of me hopes for and wonders if that's even a possible thing in our culture for somebody that crazy and if Christians would embrace that. Like, think of the craziest, like a Hitler, or just terrible, evil, we all agree, evil people. Would we even allow that to happen? Should we allow that to happen? I don't know. And that's the turmoil that I have inside of me, that wrestling with some of those
Do you
things.
mind explaining, like, just a little bit more of your Saul to Paul
so Saul
analogy?
Yeah, so Saul is the guy inside of Scripture. Our church is going through the book of Acts right now, and so that's a historical book outlining how the church began. And Saul was a guy that was the enemy of the church. He was a guy that killed people that claimed that they believed in Christ, and he was not a fan of Christians, and literally would have them killed, and was one of the people leading the charge on that. And then he had an encounter with God, and was blinded, and traveling one day, thrown off his donkey, all this kind of stuff. And then he had a miraculous healing, scales fell from his eyes, all these things that happen inside of the book of Acts. It's wild, it's crazy. But then he became like the pioneer for the gospel and the church, or at least one of the pioneers for it, has written 2/3 of the New Testament, has shaped Christian culture probably more than any other New Testament writer, all of those kinds of things. And so, like, in our culture, I wonder, in a Twitter culture and a social media culture, all of that, if we would keep his baggage from even letting the gospel go forward in the ways that he has. And whether we do or don't, I mean, I think God used him in a powerful way, and it was a different culture, so we shouldn't expect the exact same thing. But I wonder sometimes if you could name, and I won't, but the craziest person that's the most outlandish, outspoken person about Christianity, if we would even allow that to happen. What would it take for us to allow that to happen? And we saw some pretty crazy miracles that Paul did, and things that the Holy Spirit used to kind of have the proof be in the pudding, I guess. Hopefully that's not like a bad thing. Sometimes I don't realize what I guess some of those cultural things we say are. So look it up.
I think that's a good point that you make about this whole Saul to Paul kind of experience. Like, we don't sometimes think that these people can actually have life change. But I also think on the flip side, sometimes we give a free pass to celebrities that claim to be Christian. And I think that even goes back to our conversation on tribalism a little bit. When the second we hear somebody's a Christian, we're like, oh, they're on our side. And we kind of want to like support that. I see this on The Bachelor, with The Bachelor following that they have.
Wait, you watch The Bachelor?
Yes, I watched The Bachelor.
Oh, wow.
But anytime you hear that a contestant is a Christian, that's like the first thing people say about them is, oh yeah, so-and-so's on the show. And you say, oh, did you know they're a Christian?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like,
I'm their fan now.
yeah, like all of a sudden you're following them on every social media. It really doesn't matter how they live their life at all. All you care about is the fact that they've identified as a Christian and they're on your side, and all of a sudden they're worth supporting because we're on the same team.
Yeah, I don't care if they're a Christian dating 26 girls at once. They are a Christian.
Yeah. Yes,
Well,
and they have gained my support because of it.
And isn't that the danger though? Because then it's like people are going, oh, well, I could be a Christian and live like them, like because they're Christians. So.
What's wrong with dating 26 girls at one time?
And they do become leaders and influencers because of that. Like, they have a voice in the Christian culture, and so there is accountability that should be there. But I mean, I just see it in different parts of their culture. It's not just with the Kanye's and
and there have been some that have through Bachelor, I would say, lived pretty immoral lives, but I think there have been some that have been faithful in some ways Christian
Wait, Alex,
people.
you watch The Bachelor?
he does.
I listen,
It's out.
How do we do this cultural podcast without knowing?
Right.
I think what makes Kanye West an interesting example though is that he's a polarizing figure.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that it's something where the majority of Christians are going to be on board right away. This is going to be one of those things where Christians are going to be skeptical.
Yeah.
Because the other, with like The Bachelor and some like Justin Bieber even, like there was a lot of people, there's probably a lot more crossover there with the Christian community where they're like, oh, now I can root for this and it's okay for me to root for this because they said they're Christian. It's okay. But now with Kanye, it's like you have this thing where a lot of Christians who have probably, well, except for that, maybe that stint when he supported Trump, but there's a lot of people who were probably like
didn't like him,
said he was a bad influence on our kids. He's a bad influence on culture. He's arrogant. He's this, he's that. And so now I think you'll see Christians be much more skeptical of his conversion.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Without knowing like his faith journey at all or what there is, if there is one. I mean, I think the pastor that married him and Kim is from Miami. Wilkerson is it Rich Wilkerson, I think?
Yeah, Junior. Yeah.
And like he has a big congregation. He teaches the gospel. He teaches the Bible. I mean, they're about Jesus. Like their churches does have celebrities in it. But yeah, I don't know. Is this like, you look at the different kind of ebbs and flows of society over the years, and like whether, in the 50s where we really pushed towards like purity and all of this sort of thing, and like and then maybe as we start to push against and rail against Christianity now in our culture, and I don't know, I hesitate to use this as an example, but I'm going to do it anyways. But it's one of those things where I think everything's kind of topsy-turvy right now in our society because you have so many outspoken people, whether it's on social media or in the news media, and you have things like with this whole Trump presidency thing where all of a sudden people who are kind of morally ambiguous are suddenly to argue against the president have to find a moral compass, right? Because they have to say, well, what he's doing is immoral. And then now all of a sudden you have the Me Too movement, you have all these other things that circle around it, and it becomes this thing where people that you maybe thought, well, I never thought of them as being moral or Christian or whatever, they're realizing, wait, I have to stand for something. Like we have to kind of like clean our act up if we're going to also be holding someone else accountable to something. If does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think none of it's new in the political world. No. Like there's always been, people that have an allegiance to a certain party and all that. But what's different now is like this is the second president with Twitter, and he has he does just tweet things, and you can actually respond and feel like you responded. Like I can at him, and people do all the time and say crazy things, to him.
Kofifi.
Yeah, and so you can so never before, like if you wanted to think you were actually talking to the president and taking a stand against the president, it's like, what are you going to do? Take a picture of the letter you sent to him and then put it on a billboard, So there's like this, we feel like we have a voice towards him because of those platforms. And so,
but I think there's this strange sense of morality coming out of this for people that whether it's just, it reminds me of growing up in the church in the 90s. There was a lot of that surface level, I'm a Christian, like you had to have everything in order. You had to be perfect. Your family had to be clean cut and perfect. You had to like represent yourself in this way, and people kind of got caught up into the facade of it.
And you could hide it a lot easier.
Yeah, you could hide it easier. And it's like we're kind of seeing a resurgence of that, but in popular culture where people are like, okay, I can't, I got to go back and delete all my old tweets or I'm going to lose my job. Like I got to go and like at least present this facade that I'm perfect. And I think we're kind of heading in that direction. And so like, it's just weird seeing this kind of morality shift. And I think when you start to look at someone like Kanye West, who is polarizing and is now saying he's a Christian, like, you could go to both sides of this. Like, yay, like he's gonna start a revival, or oh no, like is this just another excuse to to get on board with everyone else?
Right. And I think also on his end, his like conversion to Christianity is so public, and so like we have seen his life, every single aspect of his life before this, and like we have seen every single thing that he's done that's not the best. And so like, but I feel like any other average Joe who has maybe lived out the same life and had the same flaws or mess ups, but then if they converted to Christianity, it's not as public, so we're like, yes, like God is like saving him and like God has changed his life. And I just feel like we're more willing, for some reason, if it's not as public or a famous person, we're more willing to be like, yes, God could do that. But maybe since it's in public, we really see like the depths of what he's done, and it's like, I don't know if I believe that, and we're more skeptical. So it is kind of like hard, because it's like if you are famous and that is something that happens in your life, how do you go about that? Do you just immediately just share it publicly, or do you keep it quiet? I'm sure for him that would be a hard thing to figure out.
Yeah.
Well, and when you live a life as a celebrity, you have a different community. Like you can't just go to church and not be known as a celebrity. And so I just think being a Christian in that kind of community, I don't know, that would be really hard.
Yeah. And slowly with the podcast, we're all really starting to understand what that's like. I mean, to be quite celebrities.
Oh, wow.
Stay humble.
That was a total joke. Obviously not. One of the things that this reminds me of is that same Paul guy. He writes in Philippians 1, it's true that some people preach Christ out of envy and rivalry. I could see Kanye being a guy that does that. He's made a rivalry out of the two in some ways, but others do it out of goodwill. The latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel, but the former preach it out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing that they can stir up trouble for me while I'm in chains. But what does it matter? The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached. And because of this, I rejoice. And so there's different cultural context things happening inside of there, but that's like the tension that I even wrestle with is Christ being preached? I haven't been there, and none of this has been public enough, and I think they've tried to keep it underground in some ways. I don't know why, all the reasons, and I haven't watched every service and all that. And so a part of me is hopeful that Christ is being preached, and that there's people that Kanye could influence that no way any of us with all of our celebrity could ever influence. And so that's where the hopeful thing is, and trusting that that's true, that Christ is being preached, but also grieving because I want a true Christ preached and true gospel preached, and there are wolves in sheep's clothing. And so I go back and forth in my mind on, is this good or is this bad? All of that. So.
Well, we can't judge people's hearts. That's just like, I think we've been trying to say that, but ultimately, like, nobody knows. We can't judge if Kanye has had an inner transformation or not. So that makes it hard too.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Bieber? I've been like waiting.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about Bieber.
Okay,
what
I brought him up earlier.
Because I mean, you believe he's a Christian, right?
Well, he's like a similar kind of example, I would say. Maybe not. I don't know.
am a believer, so
That's what I was gonna say.
I am also a believer.
Okay, well, I like Bieber, and
so that makes you more likely to believe he's actually a Christian.
Human condition.
It's real.
I don't know.
It's real life.
Never say never, really. Like, I hated, literally, I did not like Justin Bieber. I was a student pastor. He was annoying and like all those things, you know.
You
at the
made a
beginning.
music video.
So I did not like Bieber. I thought he was stupid and annoying. I've loved my boy bands and thought he was trying to take their limelight. And then I watched Never Say Never, and it was like an apologetic for me. Like it convinced me like of his upbringing, and like it convinced me of some of his faith story. So I latched on, like we said, we do, if there's that Christian component, and just like he beat the odds, he got a guitar and learned it backwards, like all those things. Then Jaden got on there, and then Never Say Never, you know.
Did you make a music video?
I did try to be relevant and make a lot of music videos in my day. Most
I remember
of them
one was a
are
Bieber one.
unable to be seen. So
Well, anyway, it's pretty cool. So, yes, when it comes to Bieber, he's somebody who, him and his wife have both been a little bit more outspoken about their faith.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think his relationship with Judah Smith, that's his name, right? He's a pastor that has been Justin's pastor for most of his life.
Yeah.
I think, like, at least in okay, let's go back to what I was saying before. We can't judge people's hearts, but it does seem like there is a lot of fruit there. Maybe not everything that he posts and does, but I was encouraged.
Yeah, that's a hard one because I feel like I am more on board with him being a
You
Christian.
have a bias.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I just think, well, he's never called himself Jesus before, so that kind of helps with
One
the
point, okay.
transition. I don't know, and that's the other thing is it's hard too because they're both in this culture of just like being a celebrity, and like I can't even imagine what it would be like to try and like be a Christian and follow what like the Bible says and follow Jesus when everything that's surrounding you is just pulling you away from that just constantly. And I mean, that's all of us, but I feel like celebrities especially are just in the middle of it. And so I just can't imagine how hard it is to try and do that as a celebrity.
Yeah.
Well, we idolize them, so it's a catch-22 again. Like we're the ones that give them that authority in our lives, you know, and so we expect things out of them, and then all that kind of stuff. We give them our money and our allegiance, you know, and so
It's like we see the American dream though in that in the celebrity thing,
or the Canadian dream,
or the Canadian dream.
In
Well, but they
Bieber's
usually
case.
come down and do the American dream thing.
Yeah. So that was the thing about Bieber, but
So yeah, and it's like you said, like this. It's a weird thing to sit here and be like, well, I think Justin Bieber's a Christian. Well, I think Kanye's a Christian, and like at the end, like
It's true.
like in some ways that's kind of childish to even like have that conversation. But I think if we are, I mean, I think sincerely we're looking at it from like the consequence perspective of it, like what's going to come from that. Like are we going to see people come to Christ because of this? Are people who've never been able to see themselves as a Christian? Because I mean, I think with someone like Kanye, they're like, if he actually has a powerful testimony and people who've identified with him all these years who would have never saw themselves as being willing of Christ's mercy could all of a sudden see themselves in him and go, oh wow, maybe I am willing, or maybe I am valuable to Christ. Like maybe he does want me, you know, maybe he is for me. And they never thought that. Like, I think that's what's so powerful about this. And I think at the heart of it, that's probably what we're all excited about, no matter what it is when we see a celebrity kind of come to Christ, that like, oh, they have this voice that we feel like we don't have. But I think that's kind of the secondary part of this is like, we need to realize how influential we are. Like, I think like we kind of strip ourselves of the evangelism skills that we have when we think, oh, we just need another celebrity to do my job. Like, like really, it's just that one person that you have a connection with. It's just that one person that you know that you could be witnessing to, and you are you do have that clout, you know, you do have that influence in their lives. And I think sometimes like it's hard to see that because you just are like, oh, I don't have, you know, 1 million followers on Twitter. So.
Yeah, I mean, just like celebrities are placed in the environment they're placed in to influence the people around them. We have all been placed in our own environment, in our work, with our friends, with our family. That's where God has placed us, and we have an influence on those people right around us. So that is kind of encouraging just to be like, I think we do hold that up to a higher, look, they have more followers, but you're the person where you are right now, and God has you there so that you can share with the people you're influencing. And that is really encouraging for sure.
It's convicting to me too, because if Kanye has more influence in someone's life that I'm close to than I do, that's probably a problem. You know, like my kids are going to grow up watching these celebrities and sports stars and all of those
YouTubers
kind of things.
mainly, but
YouTubers and VR and AR and all this kind of stuff. And if I actually submit or just give my influence away to these people instead of realizing the influence I have in their lives, and man, I am missing. So I have a fear in some ways that I can just do that without even realizing it, you know, in the lives of people. And it is giving a pass. Like, man, if Kanye could, then I can use him as my apologetic for why you should. But no, it's because of what Christ has done in my life and what he can do in your life. That should be the most winsome thing, not what Christ has done in Kanye's life. That's great. Awesome. Yeah. Praise God if he is doing something. But if I can't point to what he's done in my life to the person across the table from me that I'm in a relationship with, ouch. Yeah. You know, so that's convicting, you know, for me, to be honest.
So my biggest takeaway is that we should stop judging other people and be accountable for our own witness. What are you doing?
Yeah. But these types of things in culture do allow us to have those kind of conversations and bring retrospect to our own lives. And so I think they are healthy to look at and to have some of that retrospect, you know, for sure. That's cool.
Yeah, I think it's good to not just be dismissive. I think there might be people listening right now who goes, who cares? Like, that's their attitude. Like, who cares if Kanye's a Christian or not? Like,
I literally said that before I walked in this room.
Right. But I think
they're not listening anymore, though. That person
they gave up a long time ago.
But so thank you if you're still listening.
Yeah, thank you for sticking around. But I think that's just that it's like, well, yeah, you might not care, but like, people do care, and this is an important thing to discuss and an important thing to kind of wrap our heads around. So
people are talking about it.
Yeah.
So we have to use these things in our own lives as points of dialogue to build relationships and not just be mute to what's happening in culture. That's just ignorant, you know? And so we have to use these kind of things in our lives.
I'll be vulnerable here and say that if it isn't already shown, like, I'm a big Kanye West fan. I've been listening to him for a very long time.
He takes your money.
I will say he did win me with his poopity scoop.
You like that song?
I love that song.
My son loves that song too. But he's 8, so that's understandable. But yeah, it's one of those things where like that almost sounded pretentious, but I was going to say, like, I recognize his musical genius. No, that's not what I mean though. Like, I'm just saying I really respect him as a musician and the talent he has. And so, and I think sometimes looking, like, I spent years in Christian retail and like dealing with like selling Christian albums and stuff like that. And like, and it's not that they're always bad, but the quality sometimes, there's like certain groups or musicians that are really, really good and they kind of stand above the rest, and there's just a lot of stuff that's not quite there. And so when you look at someone like a Kanye, who does have, whether you agree or don't, but I believe has a lot of talent and a lot of skill, and to see him kind of elevate, you know, the savior I believe in, like, I think in his music, if that's really where he's headed with this, like, that excites me, because I'm like, this is stuff that's on another level, and people are going to hear a message that they've never heard before because of it. And so for me, that's really exciting. But that's just kind of like, oh, I'm a fanboy, so I get to say that, and you can go, well, you shouldn't listen to Kanye anyways. But
I can respect that.
He's changed not just music, but like literally Adidas. Like, there's a shoe brand and culture in some of these ways. And so you have to say, and that's why we're talking about him, he is a culture shaper. Like, I think we can't deny, and if you're living under a rock thinking he's not shaping culture, then that would just be ignorant. And so that's why we talk about culture shapers in a podcast about culture and Christianity. So
Well, are you going to have some more Oreos, Alex? You're going to eat a few more
They're
Oreos?
safe for our guests.
That's fine.
If Rachel leaves them for people.
Okay.
I don't know.
Rachel's going to eat all the Oreos. No, I think this has been a good conversation. I think that it's always interesting when you start talking about celebrity. But I'm really glad Mackenzie got to talk about The Bachelor.
Yeah.
I feel
Me
like
too.
she's really
And
wanted
Justin
to
Bieber.
Liberated.
and really wanted to do that.
Finally got
Episode
to do it.
13, we're here, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Episode 13.
No, yeah, congratulations to us.
So, no, it's just crazy. It's gone by fast. It's
Yeah.
wild. It's like,
Yeah.
we turned 13 this
Yeah,
week.
and if you enjoy listening to it, please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen. Subscribe to the YouTube account or whatever you do, however you consume it. We would really appreciate that. You can message us on social media at CCC Omaha, or you can send us an email, podcast@cccomaha.org. We'd love to hear from you. But until next time, this is it for us. All right, I'm gonna go listen to that new Kanye album.
All right. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.